Bloodwolf Arts Studio. Unleash the artist within. Welcome to Bloodwolf Arts Studio, and I'm your host, Mr. Moonlight. So today I'm reading the next poem in my series of poetry, my collection of poetry, The Seasons of Life, Volume 1, Autumn. And this one was written on October 10th, 2011, so only 3 days after my last one was written, The Seed of Dreams. And this one is titled, Where Have You Gone? Uh, so this one was, it's like there's a lot of poems that have a lot of significance for me, but this was one that really had a lot of um, life-changing things for me because when I wrote this one was I was I was processing grief, anger, frustration. I had just barely heard that my mom was divorcing my dad, and there was a lot of stuff I was feeling. It really took me off guard, like, because like this kind of stuff just doesn't happen. Like it doesn't happen to me. Like it happens like this is the stuff that happens to everybody else. This doesn't happen to me. Like we're in the kingdom of God. Like I thought we were doing so good. And it's like this doesn't happen to me. Like this happens to everybody else. And I remember feeling just so devastated and confused. And so of course I'm like I'm gonna write a poem about it because I have no idea what I'm feeling right now. And um, truth is I blamed myself for it. I thought, well, what did I do wrong? Um, how come I didn't stop this? How come I didn't see this coming? How did I not know that mom was so unhappy that this was the decision she was going to make? And the entire poem is just all about me just um, being confused, being blindsided, not seeing this coming in this sense. And it's there's you can see in the word usage and the imagery that's painted is um, there's a that where it's like there's just confusion where there's one line that says, I hear your smiles and I see your laughs, but is it truly there? And being like, well, you looked perfectly fine. Everything looked fine. And apparently it's not because you are getting a divorce. I remember everything changing after that, suddenly dad was sleeping on the couch, which was super bizarre. Mom wouldn't let him stay in bed anymore. Suddenly dad was doing everything he could. It's like I remember there were so many things that dad was doing to try to change her mind. I guess it's that thing where it's like you in a marriage where it's like, you know, stuff gets swept under the rug or overlooked, you're too busy for something. And then all of a sudden this comes out of seemingly nowhere. And it's like, no, this was festering for a long time. Um, and I remember my dad suddenly like paying so much more attention to mom, wanting to um, do things for her, like um, he like put money into remodeling the house, because we lived in a fairly rundown place up on the farm, and dad was doing all these extra things suddenly, being like, I'm like to take care of her. It's like this is too little, this is way too late, and it's not even about, it's not even about the physical things, which is like in relationships, it never like in actual relationships, it's never about the physical things. Of course, like here I am at 19 years old, I don't understand any of this. All I'm processing at this time is what did I do? Um, because one thing that um, I didn't realize subconsciously at that point yet was that I had taken on a role of being the one who kept the family together, and I took all that on me. Like it's my job to make sure the family's together. Um, that was I don't remember. I feel like that was a role I took on at a very young age, um, because I felt like I always had to be the peacemaker, um, a twisted version of peace that means everything looks fine, which is not peace. Like that's not actual peace. Peace, yeah. I'm not gonna go into some philosophical discussion about peace, but that's not peace. Um, but there was a lot of responsibility I put on, like image protection of a relationship, like sacrificing myself to keep the peace, to keep the appearance of peace. And one of the big things about this for me was, dad was so busy all the time. He's almost never home. Um, managing three families and so many children and um, you know, doing all the finances for the farm. And he was, I think at this point he was also a governing board member for the DCCS. So he had all these responsibilities, taking on way too much for someone who wants to be a father. It's like there's only so many hours in the day. Um, and so and and really I don't just knowing dad, it's like I don't ever feel like he learned how to really engage in uncomfortable emotions. That just wasn't something that he developed. He's also the oldest of all of my grandfather's children who like he had like my grandfather I think had a lot more children than my dad had. But my dad was the oldest of the oldest, like the very firstborn. Um, and so he definitely carries to this day still a lot, but um, not really knowing how to learn to, actually, I think take the time to have much of an emotional presence because I didn't remember dad having very much of a presence in my life growing up, especially at this time. Um, he was just like the provider, providing everything except for the emotional presence of a father, um, even if that was his intention, which I'm I'm inclined to believe that that was his intention. He wanted to, but priorities, loyalties, everything else shouldered all that on mom, which was what made this experience so devastating for me. And I know my brothers and the rest of my family took this. A lot of people took this really hard. Obviously, they already processed it in their own way. Um, Me in particular, though, I felt like I was had a different relationship with mom than the rest. Like my brothers were always, they were always outdoorsy. They were always doing things like motorbiking and fishing and swinging through the trees and they was like they prioritized work over school and I didn't. Like they were they were out working the farm like younger than I was. Like that was just them. And I was always the one at home with mom, taking care of the house and assisting around the home in a lot of more domestic ways than I feel like my brothers really cared to. It's one of the things that really irritated me growing up was I'm like, they go out there, they go to work, they don't do anything around the house. And I really felt like I could see mom's perspective in a lot of that stuff because I'm like, they don't help around the house. And so my mom was my entire rock. She was my entire world. And so when I found out she was getting a divorce, it was like my entire world just crumbled. Um, and at this point, like this is over halfway through this first book volume. Um, and this was really the point where I feel like this was really a big turning point in the things I wrote. because like it was just all downhill from here. Like when I heard this news, it was like it's like the other stuff I experienced was like devastating and it was life altering in so many ways, so far, many far reaching ways. But this was like the one where it's like, hey, things are going downhill and I can't stop. I can't stop it. I'm so powerless. Why didn't I see this? I could have done something different if I only I would have known. And it really reinforced like the idea. It's like the world is evil. It's out to get me. It's like this is destroying mom. This is destroying our family. And it just reinforced like the world is just evil. And And I remember praying to God a lot, um, that God would change my mom's mind, because when you grow up in the order, it's like you just don't leave. It's like nobody leaves. Like nobody's, I mean, people leave, but when people leave the order, it's like it's a death sentence. Like nobody talks to them anymore. You're not allowed to talk. You're not really allowed to talk to people outside the order. And so for mom to leave, because I'm like, obviously it's like divorce. Like, yeah, she's gonna leave the order too. I had already had an older brother leave. I already had an older sister leave. And it's like, okay, oh shit, now mom's leaving. And she's going to be damned for all eternity because she's leaving the kingdom of God. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what a relationship with her will look like anymore because now mom's bad. And I'm like, my main supporter is now bad. And so definitely a lot of confusion. Like I don't know what to feel. Like mom's always been the good person in my life, taking care of me, and now it's like now mom's gonna be bad. It's my fault. I didn't do enough. Praying constantly that maybe God will do something to change her mind, that so she'll stay. The reality of where this was ultimately leading me was this was like the beginning of the end for me and where I was going in life, as far as like living up to the standards and expectations of the order and my duty and calling there. It's like I didn't realize this at the time, but this was basically the beginning of the end because um, it was always one thing that really bothered me, and it was one of the things that ultimately, and it was something that resulted of this poem was um, the way that people talked about my mom changed. And this was something that was always said in the order, that the thing that would make people leave was people would, and it was always said of people who left the order that they were being treated like outsiders before they'd even left. So it's like, of course they left. Like people weren't surprised because like if you get treated like an outsider, um, then eventually you leave, and then it just reinforces this belief that you're a bad person and that they were right all along and you were a bad person. But this is what I mean when it's like this is like a death sentence in a community like the order. It's like, because once your reputation's gone, it's like there's no going back. Everybody treats you like an outsider. Nobody treats you good anymore. Nobody's allowed to be around you anymore. And it's like you end up either having to conform, which is ultimately you just betraying yourself, invalidating your own experience, deepening the psychological hold, deepening your roots into hell, into the now deeper experience of living hell on earth, of living in denial of your own experience. Um, but it's like you either have to break or you leave the order. And then when you eventually do leave, then it just validates the experience that, yeah, you were a bad person. Um, so when my mom decided to divorce my dad, it was like suddenly everything was gone. There was a lot of panic in the family. We're in panic because something I remember hearing was that one of my aunts, because my dad was married to three full sisters, my mom and her two sisters, and one of my other um, one of my dad's other wives was like in panic that the other wife was going to leave. It's like now they were all panicking that everybody was going to leave and everybody was freaking out. And everybody was suddenly just talking horribly on my mom. And it wasn't like that was anything new because my mom, I mean, I guess, I don't know, I guess it's part of the plural wife thing. In the culture of the order, it's like already trash talking on each other, gossip, rumors and stuff. But it was like it just got a lot worse when this happened. And people would be talking about my mom, and suddenly it was just like my mom was a bad person, and so people started pulling back, obviously making my mom feel even more isolated, um, and feel leaving me even more confused. Like you say you care about her, but she's obviously struggling, and everybody's pulling away because now she's a bad person because she's unhappy and she wants to leave dad, and she's the problem. She's breaking the family apart. And I remember hearing a lot of the comments about my mom, and it really just reinforced where I'm like, I knew in my heart, I'm like, I know mom's not a bad person. I know she's not a bad person. How can you say she's a bad person? And ultimately, that was what pushed me on my mission of being like, well, I know that mom's not a bad person, so there must be something in my belief systems that's not making sense. And I didn't realize it at this point, but um, I started to really dig into my belief systems because there was some conflicting data. I'm like, because mom is not a bad person, and suddenly she's a bad person, and I'm supposed to see her as a bad person because she's going to leave, and she's getting a divorce, and it's like nobody gets divorced. And some one of the things that circulated around about her was, if you leave the order after you've been married, especially, it's like you're damned, and it's like this is a damnation that nobody comes back from. It's like this is like your soul is destroyed. You go to a place worse than hell. Um, which I don't know how many cultures and religions actually teach that. I know that's an LDS belief. Anything that's related to LDS, whether it's fundamentalist or even mainstream LDS, is there's a place worse than hell. I don't know how much they teach it in the LDS today still, but I know some people there, and it's people downplay it, but they call it being a son of perdition. But like even like this instance, because the son of perdition is like you knew the truth and then you rejected it, and that's how it was treated. It's like you're going to a place worse than hell because you looked truth straight in the eye and then you rejected it, and that's where people are like, that's where your mom's going. And there's and that in the teachings, it's like when people are in hell, then Jesus and angels will come minister to you. But it's like if you're son of perdition, then nobody's coming for you. This is your lot for all eternity, and this will never end. This is eternal damnation. And the thing that would be said about my mom was there's no forgiveness for her. Um, so there was a lot of this stuff that was going through my mind when I was writing this, and it was just all such a blur. I wasn't even living at home at the time when this happened. I was living over at one of my aunt's place, on the farm, because they had the faster internet, and I was doing this virtual academy, online school, online high school. I was in my last year, um, but I wasn't living at home. And so when I found out about this, it was like I heard it over like Facebook Messenger, or might have even been MSN Messenger, because I think MSN Messenger was still a thing back then, but I think it was through Facebook or something. I don't remember hearing it in person, hearing the news. It was like a message or something, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this was about to become my reality. So this one is titled, Where Have You Gone? So a link to the copy of my books are down in the description. You can like the video, subscribe to my Facebook and my YouTube, Blood Wolf Arts Studio, and you can also follow me across all my social platforms, like on TikTok as Mr. Moonlight Rhyme. and planning to have my website finished and published here pretty soon. Um, so feel free to check that out. I'll have the poem right after this video in just a minute here. So thank you for tuning in and welcome to my side of the moon. Where Have You Gone? By Aaron Brown. The skies are flooding with my tears. The storm, it never ends. You've been with me all these years, the pain I cannot mend. I hear your smiles and see your laughs, but is it truly there? You've been gone crying, wishing, hoping, the thought I cannot bear. You're at the edge of this tall cliff. I thought you on the ground. Why hadn't I seen you disappeared? I'm torn by what I found. I should have watched, but I didn't see you getting higher. Step by step, and up you went, being deceived by the liar. He whispered a pre-written scroll into your fragile ear, hoping to destroy your soul by preying on your fear. One by one he led you on, pining for your soul, prodding, poking, saying jump. He'd almost reached his goal, though he was the one for sure who pushed you from your stand. I still had not been right there, holding up your hand. Yet much hope is with me still. I pray with all my heart. The Savior, He will save your soul and keep us not apart.